Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Political Vigilante. I am here with Patreon supporter Mitchell Heldt. Mitchell, thank you so much for doing this and supporting the show. You always bring up very interesting and intriguing subjects to talk about. And you've been working, the last time we talked, you've been working on a water project, and you're going to kind of give us some updates on that. Is that what?
Yes. Yeah, I thought we'd have a bit shorter this time than normal. And then go over the issues I'm having, because I'm seeing them happen in other activist-related issues.
Okay.
And the first one that came up with was after last week got the question, why West Virginia, why not Flint? And that seems to be a very common question. And main reason was originally the conversation started around the chemicals that were being released in West Virginia for the making of paint, military weapons, even chewing gum, the special flavoring necessary to make chewing gum not lose its flavor after 10 minutes. People think of the nice, safe chemical that they eat, well, possibly safe chemical that they eat on the chewing gum. A lot of people don't think about the chemicals that get expended in the manufacture of those chemicals, and when those go in the local rivers and devastate the local communities.
What are some of those chemicals?
Well, some of them we don't know if they're good or bad because they don't get studied. University makes a large donation, and no studies happen on some chemicals. So we won't really know if they're good or bad. One thing that tends to be a signal to me, doesn't mean it is bad, doesn't mean it's good, is when one chemical gets released,
right,
and they draw the public's fire on that chemical just to prevent the rest of the chemicals that are released with it from even getting talked about. So in the case of West Virginia, they had a chemical go in the water that would, in young children, might kill them. Other people might rashes, blisters, whatever. And that's in the water.
And this is released from a chewing gum plant.
No, this was a chemical that was used for washing coal. Because in the 70s, 80s, 90s, people started getting concerned about the amount of dust coming off the coal trains as they went through towns. They got very popular to wash all the coal so that dust didn't wash off. Now, the chemical to wash off the coal is very, very, very nasty. And that's stored in a tank right there by the coal fields. So when that tank leaked, for hundreds of miles, the water wasn't drinkable for months.
Oh, it just shows you like what fossil fuels do. It's just a problem on top of a problem on top of a problem. Like it just and how does this, it's just
well, the town that we originally targeted, and we're still looking at the possibility of other towns that run that area. The town we originally targeted is full of tank farms of different chemical companies that are almost immune to any kind of regulation or investigation of what their chemicals do. All we know is that when it gets in the water, the people there are not healthy. They refer to themselves as a cancer zone. And some of the chemicals, well, we know that there's only a few methods to actually remove them from water. Mm-hmm. And so we put together a system for removing that from water, and it just had the side effect that it would also take lead out, mercury, some uranium, but it's hard to get more than 98% uranium out of water. So you have to go to a second step for that. But whenever you have coal, you have uranium. When it settled in the ocean, was a time of a lot of volcanism. There's different types of uranium, different radioactivity. So I won't get into that.
Wow.
But our targeting was, my conversation, when my interest came in doing this, it was one specific town, one specific problem, And the town was small enough where I thought I could raise enough money on the internet to actually go into everybody that could not afford the proper water filtration system, raise that amount of money, and give them a water system. Just a few blocks in the city of Flint, Michigan, would be more people and then putting one of these filters into every house in the entire town. So it's a question of scale. Whenever you have a question of scale, you have a question of scaling. To go in and address a problem in a small city, I can train maybe 10 people. We can go out, we can solve the problem in 1 year or 2 years. Right. We plan that on 2 years because the filters need to be changed, and we're making a system that allowed us to use people with reduced training to make very technical decisions. Mm-hmm. So we can go in and train them. We add extra valves to the systems to make them extra cleanable, extra changeable, and that the users don't have to do a lot of work afterwards. Because if we leave extra steps, my concern is that the users would skip those steps, and then they would not have safe water. So doing that in a town of 5,000 people or 12,000 people, that probably 4,000 of them would qualify.
Right.
And of those, probably that was living in possibly 1,000 to 1,500 houses. So that is a different scale than going to a town of 100 and some thousand and training in a huge workforce, large amount of equipment, and a whole production team. So we would consider the first one to be a pilot project. And by no means do we mean that we would be excluding a town like Flint in the future. But, baseball pitchers don't start off in the big leagues.
Yeah. It's a good thing to put out there in terms of activism, and it's one of the things I talk about on this show, which is start small, start in your own backyard, and you're just one guy trying to start something, trying to get that going. So yeah, start in a small town and work out the kinks before you move it up to 100,000 person city, and then from there move to a 500,000 city and on up the ladder. So yeah. It's good for people to understand that, we all want change to happen overnight and just across the board, and that. So because not achieving that immediately shouldn't mean to, disregard starting something on a small scale.
Right, and we had other projects we were spinning off from it.
Right.
For instance, we could not take this to California in its current form because it would have too much water usage to clean the water. West Virginia has ambient water. I mean, just lots of it. So we can use water differently in West Virginia, and putting extra water into the sewers in Virginia helps dilute the nasty chemicals that the companies are putting in. So it's actually beneficial there to use the extra water, right, until we can clean up the system. In California, every drop is precious.
Yeah.
And we can't go into California because there are cities in California that are worse than Flint. Many large cities in California worse than Flint. And again, we would need practice. Kentucky Fried Chicken didn't start as a chain. It started, teaching this crew and moving on. Pretty soon they got good at it. Well, that's what we have to have before we go to addressing in California. Mm-hmm. But the next stage we would want to go to is recycling milk jugs. And as silly as that sounds, what happens with California is that you use a lot of water for flushing toilets. Doesn't have to be drinking quality water to flush toilets. Doesn't have to be shower-ready water to flush toilets, and it doesn't even have to be cooking-ready water. Right. So we would like to make tanks for diverting our excess wastewater, which is actually, we use more water for flushing toilets than we do for drinking. So here we have the perfect benefit. If we can make a holding tank to supply people's toilets with our wastewater, then we can reduce the amount of water that Californians use. And our product can go in without harming. And we're not using new technologies here. We're just using a new way of putting it out.
Yeah, I mean, Australia is a country that has had to deal with a lot of droughts, and my guess is they just passed a law because every public bathroom I was in had dual flush toilets, and also several cities in California have passed laws where you have to use waterless urinals, and so there's a lot of like solutions that are already in place, and maybe implementing yours could be. Not in lieu of, but in addition to other solutions that are out there.
Yes, because California is going to need to. California actually, after you flush the toilet, is currently recovering the water. So enough water is not coming down from the mountains that they cannot go without reusing it. And so there are new methods coming out. There's ultrasonic water purification, which I absolutely love. And it's easier in California than about anywhere in the world. And that is good for inland people. It basically lifts the water into the air, and then if the air is hot, it gets absorbed in, and it's easy to condense out. And it's a lot cheaper than boiling it.
Oh, wow.
Since you have so much sunlight for photocells,
right?
It's real easy to do there. And that's just some of the issues I had. The other one I came across was once I started getting flack for putting it in Michigan, not Flint, I started realizing that I'm probably going to face some of the other issues that we're having with the news media right now. When you report a story that's negative like this, the people tend to just fog over the first sign that they think they're being wronged. And there was this guy at Google who actually did a very long comment, and it was immediately misquoted, severely misquoted, and everybody started quoting the misquotes, and he ended up getting fired over it. And his comment was, what do they need to do to get their people to hire more women? And he made the comment that 3% of the programmer pool is female, that they don't have enough female candidates. And they said, but in the long run, we need to do more to get more women taking these college courses for the field that we want to hire in. But it worked into that women were not capable of programming.
Right.
And he wasn't saying that at all. In fact, Portland State University, I think, actually invited him in for a speech, and they went over what he said. And their women's studies department there actually applauded him for his pro-woman stance.
Yeah, I did a video on this, and then he was, people heckled him and, called him a Nazi and all this other stuff. They totally overreacted to it. And what he was, and
maybe that's where I saw it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was suggested to me by another Patreon supporter, and I covered the video, and it showed the overreaction by mainly the left, and how it got a little hysterical. And what he was trying to do was say, and you had a woman who's like an evolutionary biology professor, addressing, one of the things he said was the workplace, is not, because men and women view the workplace differently, and so we need to change that to make it more conducive for women. What he was saying, like, make them more appealing to want to take these jobs. And then that was misconstrued as, he's sexist and saying women are not smart enough to do this or whatever. And a woman who was an evolutionary biologist on the panel at Portland State was like, no, everything he's saying is making sense.
Well, I had a situation where I hired a female engineer, master's degree. I thought she was the sharpest one in my entire team. And I noticed, of course, female engineer. the company, she was the only female engineer. And our manufacturing team would have to deal with the design teams and the production teams, and all of them would be all males except for her. And, in dealing with the dynamics of that, I had to pull aside the male engineers. I tried not to do it where it was in front of her, but in conversations, they would tend to ignore her. And, it's like, she's smarter than all of us. And if she's bringing up a problem, she's our hardest worker. She gets out there and gets things done. And you can't just shout louder because your idea doesn't have the merit that hers does. And that's what it ended up would be, is a whole bunch of people shouting. And I just say, whoa, calm down. Just go do this in an orderly fashion. Mm-hmm. I had other problems was that, hiring her was not a question of whether or not she was capable of handling the job. She had recommendations from every single instructor she ever had in school. And when I called and said I'm looking for somebody to a university, they brought her out and they said we keep presenting her and she's not getting job offers. And this bothered me. When I brought her in, I could say, there's no reason. I knew that her having multiple earrings would bother my boss, so I told her to take those off before the interview. So I always had to do a pre-interview before I took anybody by him. And but the problem was the corporate time back then. I could say hire or not hire, but they made the offer for how much. And we had the problem back there that a female engineer was limited to 50% of what could make for an offer for a woman. And I had the problem of thinking, she's perfect. Am I going to get her hopes up too high if I say yes, and the company lowballs her to the point where she wouldn't take the job? And, she basically took the job because she had no other offers. She ended up, loving the job, but, and later on, when management changed, I was able to bring her salary up to par.
Right.
But that was a huge problem, and it's still a huge problem, is women are saying on average they get 75%. And I'm still not seeing that as true. I'm saying that it's getting a few that are really well paid lumped in and still knocking off a lot of the barriers to the women. And issues like getting them the pay for when they are working. And for the women who are getting the pay, speaking up and saying, I'm finally getting it. So the women that are out there young, trying to decide if they're going to career, know that there's some hope that every job is going to be underpaid, that they're going to be hit with, because there are jobs out there where women are treated okay. There are jobs out there where women are paid well, and there's hope to go into these careers. Otherwise, they're just going to give up and go in other careers.
Right, right, and it's not a good thing, because you're missing out on a whole talent pool of people that could contribute a lot to various professions, and like you say, you were working with a woman at a master's degree. She was the sharpest person in the room, and was not afforded the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So then, how do you, going back to your issue with trying to solve this water crisis?
I just have to get used to the fact that every time I bring it up, first thing it hits, why aren't you doing it in Flint?
Yeah.
And I just need to talk about it, get used to saying it. And I need other people to realize that everybody has so many issues right now. There are so many things that our government has ignored to enrich the few, that we're like a bunch of cats thrown over clotheslines, fighting each other thinking that we're the problems with each other and not working together to solve the problems, is that it is okay to solve a problem that isn't in Flint. And that's what I'm getting hit with is like, wait a second, you need to be on the one that everybody else is. And it's like, every state in this country has a problem. Some problem. Maybe not the same problems. But we need everybody fighting all of the problems together and using our problems to help solve other people's problems. And that's the only way we're going to get help ahead.
In whatever way possible, too. And there's nothing, sometimes I think it's an American shortfall or shortcoming that we think like if we can't do it big, then forget it. And it's like there's nothing wrong with solving a small problem or a big problem in a small town or just, baby stepping your way. Like they say, one block at a time, one backyard at a time. If you fix one block in your city, or one small town that has a water issue, you fix one small town with a water issue and you show how you've done it. You learn from it, you streamline it, you learn from your mistakes to where now you can take that to a bigger city. People need to really get behind that. I always get really, and I agree with you. I think people want some big quick fix solution. It's a problem in America. We want it all instant, quick fix it all. Write a big bill, throw a couple $100 billion at it, and it's fixed. And it is frustrating, and I think a lot of people, because we're not getting the support from the government that we should be getting. So instead, we have to kind of figure this out ourselves and start up these little non-for-profits and do these little projects. But that's not a bad thing, because little projects can become big projects if they're successful enough. So it's good for people to understand that. Start small and understand that you're not going to be able to fix it all. You're not, just fix enough. An improvement is an improvement. Like I'm fond of saying, 2 steps forward and 1 step back is still 1 step forward.
Mm-hmm. So, and if we get people in this town, fresh water, that is not at risk of their chemical leaks, then we have the example to set to show every other town as well. Mm-hmm. Why aren't you doing this to there? Yeah. Whereas if we fail in Flint because it's too large an issue to handle all at once, or it takes 15 years to put out for that many houses, then people are going to say, well, it doesn't work, and nobody's going to get it. Mm-hmm. So if we start where it is feasible first, then we can jump through the hoops to make it feasible elsewhere.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's a good subject, Mitchell, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate you still fighting this and then having this conversation about how we can fix the problem and how we can address the problem. And one of those things is opening, especially in the engineering world, up to female employees, and because I think I'm all about just get the best people in there, and if you are closing off or not making something appealing, or your wages are lower, then you're limiting your talent pool. And I mean, I just know this from working in showbiz. Like I'm producing a TV show now, I got to get the best people in all of these different positions, and so it would be ridiculous for me to limit a certain position to only a certain gender or something like that. So, thank you so much for being on the show. Any final thoughts you want to leave with everybody here?
No, like I said, going back to Gandhi's or first they laugh at you. Why we need countries out there.
All right. Well, thank you so much, my friend. We're having a couple technical issues here, but it'll be a good time to wrap it up. Thank you for being on the show. Anybody out there at the $25 Patreon level, you can have a monthly interview like this, and we can talk about any number of subjects that you want to discuss. And I really appreciate Mitch and everybody else out there at Patreon supporting the show. So thank you so much. And together we'll all make Gotham great again.